Okay, I wanted to take an opportunity today too. I've been meaning to do some videos on the different functions of the spine. So we're going to look at rotation and lateral bending, how the two are related. So when I'm trying to rehab a horse, one of the first things I want to do is eliminate lateral bending and strengthen the straight alignment of the spine from nose to tail, or pole to tail. And rotation is a function of the spine. In our bodies, lateral bending is this function, and rotation is this function. It's a twisting motion of the spine. In the horse, we all have talked about lateral bending, which is again the side-to-side bending of the spine, but rotation is a twisting function of the spine, just like this, but if we were on all four, it would feel like a rolling rather than a twisting. So here on the withers, if I pull the withers this way, right, I'm rolling the barrel side to side, and actually if I overbend the neck like he just did, and I put my hand on the back, I'll feel this side, the same side as the bend, the back gets tighter and higher, and the spine rotates a little bit to that side, to the outside of the bend. So same thing, if I bend the neck this way, right, and I put my hand up here on the back where the saddle would go, I feel the back tighten, whoops, on his right side, and he's not super comfortable with that. I feel the back tighten on the right side and the barrel and the spine roll to the left. That's called inverted rotation, which is how the body protects the spine when we overbend the neck. So the idea that flexing the neck deeply side to side creates suppleness, you go where? Because it's going to create tension in the back, and if it's done enough, it's also, not only is the back going to roll away from the overbending of the neck, but the pelvis is going to do the same thing, right? And I'll show this from the saddle as well, what that feels like and looks like as a rider. But just with your horse on the ground, and let me just change that. You want to put your hand behind the withers where the saddle goes and straddle the spine with the palm of your hand. Then when you bend the horse's neck, and if he's stiff, rather than bending the neck, so I don't know if you can see on the camera, but when I overbend the neck to his left, right, the left side of his back contracts and the spine shifts over to the right. So the bending, the overbending of the spine actually creates the rotation problem. And rotation is a function of the spine that has always been there, but rotation or rolling is not part of any of our traditional training vocabulary, and it's nowhere in any of our classical training information. It's always been a function of the horse's spine. So if we understand lateral bending means equal amounts of bending throughout the spine, then every time we're trying to create that sort of banana shape or curve through our horse's midline, even if I only bend the neck this much, I have the same inverted rotation effect through the back. So the more I bend the neck, the more the back or the barrel rolls the opposite way. So the bones and the body weight will go the opposite side of the bend, and the muscles along the back and the pelvis will contract and tighten so that the horse doesn't fall over. So since 1999, we had the most recent research on how rotation and lateral bending are two functions of the spine that always happen together. So in order to stabilize the rotation or the twisting function, we need the neck to be straight, even on a turn. If the neck is straight on a turn, then all four legs will move almost invisibly, but in a light lateral direction, working the oblique muscle group, right? So to come around a turn with a straight neck, say a left turn, the left hind is going to go towards the midline or adduct. The right hind is going to go away from the midline or abduct. The left front should adduct, go away from the midline in the direction of travel, and the right front would adduct, come towards the midline. So in other words, with a very straight spine and a level back, the horse sends the hindquarters to the outside and brings the front end in through slight lateral movement of all four legs. We don't have to see it, and if we see it, it's probably too much. But if we bend the neck, right, anytime we bend the neck, we overbend the neck, we create inverted rotation. Now, there's other types of rotation. If the back drops, you get what's called hyperrotation. You get a swinging back and forth of the barrel, a side-to-side motion. And if the back is lifting up in flexion, it helps stabilize the rotation. But we can also stabilize the rotation before we lift the back a lot, and that can be a way to get our horse out of pushing the back down or spinal extension, right? What we want to avoid is the whole idea that our horse's midline should curve on the shape of a circle or the shape of a turn. And don't take my word for it. You will feel with your hand on the back that as soon as you start to bend the neck, that's already happening back here in the barrel, right? And the more I bend the neck, the more I tighten that whole inside of the hindquarter muscles, back muscles, and neck muscles. So it doesn't supple my horse at all because it destabilizes a very important function of the spine. So even what we call a left-handed horse, which is what this horse is, right? We call them left-handed and right-handed horses. He's a left-handed horse because he typically likes the bones of his spine to be on a slight left twist. So his body weight and his bones are going left in the twist, right? So he's sort of twisting left, but that means his whole right side has to become tighter or he would fall over. So he doesn't have to remain a left-handed horse. That's not a permanent part of his conformation or anything. We have to help him become ambidextrous, right and left, which is directed by the rotation function of the spine. So you can feel this by just pulling the bones of the withers towards you and pushing them away and how that affects the levelness of his barrel, right? But you can also just overbend the neck and see or feel the barrel and the pelvis roll the opposite direction because the cervical spine is bent out of line with the thoracolumbar spine, which is basically from the withers to the croup, right? So to correct this, he has to engage a bit more, which is what we're working on, the flexion of the hind leg joints. But more importantly, the way I'm restoring the flexion of the hind leg joints is by using the long reins to resist the rolling of the barrel and the bending of the neck while he's on a small circle. That's going to restore the proper leg kinematics. So lateral bending, which is that, right, is always going to cause the barrel to roll. Even when we're doing lateral work, we don't want a lot of bend through the neck because the junction between the last cervical and first thoracic is just here between the shoulders, right? Kind of at the beginning of the shoulders. And if that junction between the lower neck bones and the upper back bones becomes very unstable because of all the neck bending we're asking for, then we lose control over the shoulders. So every barn you go to, English or Western, everybody's complaining about the horse escaping through the shoulder, dropping the shoulder, leaning on the shoulder. And all of that really comes down to the alignment of the lower cervical spine with the upper thoracic spine. So if we think of the base of the neck in a perfect line to the withers, right to our seat bones, then we're stabilizing that junction between the cervical and thoracic spine, which is what helps our horses maintain more upright control over both shoulders, right? And if we believe that this much neck bending is good for our horse, we're going to keep destabilizing the back and creating excessive amounts of muscular tension through the back and the hindquarter, which will start to restrict the mobility of one hind leg or both hind legs. And so you're not building suppleness at all. You're actually throwing the skeleton into so much instability that the muscles have to tighten or the horse would fall over. So understanding, again, just repeat, lateral bending is this, and we don't have to do that on a turn either because we have an invisible amount of rotation, right? And rotation in us is this movement, twisting, as opposed to side bending or lateral bending, which is that motion. But they always happen together. You gonna eat my long rein? So when I work him on the long reins, you'll see there's not a lot of neck bending, even when he goes around a tiny circle. And what I'm really resisting more than the lateral bending is the rolling or the twisting of his spine through his barrel and hindquarter. And that's what starts to restore the proper kinematics of those hind legs. Where he has some significant arthritis, we can still restore that function. Thanks, Ozzy.